cell phone up there the whole time?
No, she's standing.
I guess. She does, man? She has to hold the cell phone to her head?
Yeah, unless she has a conference phone. Blackberries all have speaker phones.
I didn't think about it. I don't even think she's on it. No, that's still first.
Good morning. I'd like to call the Community Services Special Legislative Conference Room. I'd like to call it to order this morning. I'm going to ask Mr. Councilor Baker to say the invocation for us, please.
Just stand, please. Our gracious Heavenly Father, let us thank for this day that we can come together and be about your work for the Cherokee people. Bless each and every one at this table. They might do what you believe is right in your eyes and guide and correct each one and give them safe passage home after the meetings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Kelly, would you call the roll for us, please?
Yes, sir. Harley Buzzard?
Here.
Chris Stokes?
Here.
Buell England?
Here.
Phil John Baker?
Here.
Jack Baker?
Here.
Julia Coates?
Here.
Bradley Cobb? Joe Crittenden? Jody Fishinghawk? Here. Meredith Fraley? Janelle Fulbright? Don Garvin? Chuck Jr.? Chuck Hoskins?
Here, but not a member of this.
Kinda Glory Jordan? Curtis Snell?
Here.
David Thornton? Kara Callan Watts? We do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. I want to thank everybody for coming out this morning to our 9 o'clock meeting. I want to apologize for last week for a council meeting, but we felt like it was in the best interest of everybody to come to the meetings those days, so we may could have had the meetings, but in order to make sure that we made everybody get home safe, we went ahead and canceled out. But thank you for coming again this morning. I don't see anybody in the audience that we probably don't know, so we won't do any introductions to it. But what I want to do now is have Mr. Jones to come up to give us an overview of the Indian Housing Plan for the 08. Marvin?
Thank you and good
Before
morning.
we get started, here's Mr. Baker.
Yes. If I could make a few comments first before he starts the plan.
That'd be fine.
I've got to run up the hill and see the doctor right quick.
Okay.
And,
All right.
and in case I don't get back in time, I'd at least give time for you to absorb a few of the thoughts that I've had over the weekend on this plan.
Okay.
And I apologize, but first thing on page 9, it says that they're going to do 215 90-day vouchers. That's for the folks that are homeless, get thrown out, and it amounts to about $500,000, and I don't think it's enough. I think there's more need out there in the 14 counties for crisis where Norman's going to be giving out 90-day vouchers. So that's the first thing. Second thing is originally when the chief met with this council, with the previous council, and we sat there and we said, who do we want to serve? Who needs to be prioritized? We finally came up with the neediest of the needy, the elderly, and the handicapped. Now, Mr. Cobb pointed out that all handicapped people aren't in need, and I absolutely agree with that. And so probably we could easier drop the handicapped than we could the neediest of the needy. But in this Indian Housing Plan, they have changed the wording to needy elderly instead of neediest of the needy and people with disabilities. Well, folks, you're cutting out a whole class of people that are probably some of them that need the help worse than, I mean, there's elderly with money. There's handicapped with money. There's handicapped with good jobs. There's elderly with good jobs. But the neediest of the needy have no other choice. So we can't leave them out of these housing plans. And then I just don't, clarification only on page 22, it says temporary modular add-on units. I just want some clarification on what that is. I guess I've never heard of that. Again, is $500,000 enough for the 212 90-day vouchers. And on page 32, on the table of needs, if you'll go down through there, at all income levels, there are 1,634 number of families living in either overcrowded condition or living in overcrowded conditions, and there's also 1,634 families living in substandard housing. And to ignore them in this plan is unconscionable. So I certainly hope that this committee changes that, at least go back to the neediest of the needy instead of needy elderly. And let's not ignore these, I don't know, is that really 1,634 that are both overcrowded and substandard? Or does this have to be the same number and we're talking about 4,200 or 3,200? Marvin?
Those would be two separate.
Okay, they just happen to be the same number. So we're talking about 1,634 that have low income and substandard housing, and 1,634 that are living in overcrowded conditions. And I just think it's wrong for us not to consider them priorities in this Indian housing plan of services and trying to take care of them. So that being said, I'm going to go get my shot and I'll be right back.
I'm going to have one more question for Mr. Hoskins, and I'll let Mr. Jones make a presentation because he may answer some of those questions.
Before you leave, Councilman, I'm sorry to burden you, but what page were you on when you talked about the narrative of the needy, elderly, and handicapped?
Page 32, and it's not a narrative, it's extrapolated out of the numbers.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Was that your question?
Yes.
Okay, Martin.
Hope Mr. Baker's not going to get a rabies shot. I'll repeat that to him, so none of y'all have to. I wanted to talk real briefly because I know we have limited time and opened up to as much explanations or questions that you might have, but I want to go over some overall important things. First, the time frame for the IHP. It would be best and really administratively good if we could get an approved plan as soon as possible. Let me give you a time frame. We need new money by June the 1st. And if you work backwards from that, HUD has a 60-day review period, probably another 30 days in which they have to develop a grant agreement. So when you work back from that sort of time frame back to when we go through our process and get it finally approved at a council meeting, you're looking at a relatively short time frame, ideally. Now, that's not to say that's not a drop dead date time, but it would cause a lot of issues for us because we'd have to revise other plans to create some money in order to continue operating some of the activities June 1st. So it would be ideal if we could pass this in February, and that's just for your consideration. Second thing is that the plan can be changed. It can be changed any number of times, so that if this is not the ideal exact plan, it can be changed. As you know, that we, I think at the last special committee meeting, changed the 07 plan, changed the 06 plan, actually for the second or third or fourth time, so it can be changed. The plan is based on an estimated amount from HUD right now. It has to be changed because it's an estimated amount right now, and when we get a firm number from HUD, then we'll come back in and change the plan to reflect that. In addition, we estimate the program income and the investment income, and Callie and I just had a discussion as to whether or not that the amount of program income that we're estimating in this potential or in this proposed Indian housing plan whether we'll be actually able to earn that amount with the lower interest rates. And so we had a discussion about that, and what we want to do is continue with the plan as it is, and then see how much the HUD final amount is. And we may come back in with some adjustments based on that information when we have it. With that in mind, I'd like if you could take a look at the actual resolution form, wherever that might be, the actual resolution that we would consider. I'm not sure where it would be in your packet. But it would be the actual resolution that we are considering today. I think it would be
Front.
right in your front.
Behind the housing plan.
And I'd like you to note the wording in this resolution, which has been the same resolution that we've used the last 5 or 6 or 7 times. And it's down on the "be it further resolved," the last paragraph right above the certification. And what that says is that because of these, if HUD asks for us to make some relatively minor changes that we would like in order to get it efficiently processed and back up to HUD, we would like to bring those changes, as long as they're not substantial changes, back to the committee after it's passed through the council. And if we have to revise anything, to bring it back to this committee and bring it to you and see if you agree that they're not substantial changes, and then we can make the changes and send them back to HUD. And I want to call attention to that. We haven't called attention to it before, but it's been in every resolution that's passed the last several times in regard to an Indian housing plan. An example of that would be again, the HUD amount. The HUD amount will be a firm amount when they give it to us. Right now it's based on an estimated amount, and what we would prefer not to do is when we get that firm number is then wait 2 more months to revise that plan to include the firm number, and then not have an Indian housing plan up to HUD for another 2 or 3 months. So I'm bringing that to your attention to see if that causes you concern. If it does, and you want us to go that route, then certainly you ought to change that, the way that resolution is written. Okay. I'm not sure. I see some hands raised, so I'm not sure if I should.
I'd like to go ahead and finish your presentation.
Okay.
There, Mark. You may answer some of the questions, and we'll get to them.
Another issue was at the last committee meeting, there was some discussion that Callie Ketcher had written a memo that changed the way we did things. I asked her about that, and she just sent me the memo and said read it, and I did, and we're proceeding doing the way we've always done it, which is you pass the Indian housing plan, and then we submit individual budgets to implement that plan. So in fact, you do have the opportunity to either pass or not pass the Indian housing plan. Once it's passed, we submit budgets. You have the opportunity again on those individual budgets to pass or not pass any of those individual budgets that implement the Indian housing plan. That's what I was attempting to say at the last committee meeting. That's the same process that we're going by. So in effect, you have an opportunity to disagree with the Indian housing plan right now, and then you have the opportunity to individually disagree or agree with the budgets that will be submitted later on. Okay. This plan includes less money. The projected amount is approximately $800,000 less than the 2007 Indian housing plan. And the only other thing that I have is that we emailed, I believe, out some documents yesterday that were an attempt to give those of you that haven't been on the council before some basic information about what are Indian housing plans, and a document that what the Cherokee Nation plan consists of. And then the third document was a comparison between the 07 IHP and the 08 IHP. I have copies of those, and I'm just going to hand those out right now, and then let you either ask questions about it or about anything else that we need to talk about. And I should have enough for everybody. I think that's maybe about 20 copies, so there should be 2 or 3 extra ones. And so with that,
Okay, Marvin, I think we have some questions. We'll get to those. I have Ms. Fishing Hawk, Mr. Hoskin, and Ms. Jordan. Jody, you're up first.
Yeah, I got a question, maybe it's for you, Harley. Why do we get these plans so late, and then they say we need to rush this through, and we don't have time to look at anything? Can we back it up and give them a date they need to submit it to us by, so we're not rushing?
Well, we can ask Mr. Jones why we don't get them early.
you've had them 3 weeks now. Is that not enough for people to review?
They came out, the housing plan came out in this booklet when it was sent out, and it had been about 3 weeks. But is there a possibility, Marvin, that we could get them out earlier than that? Or is this pretty much a cut-dry date that you have to have?
We generally have in the past did drafts of them in December, and then had a special meeting usually in January. This time it's a little bit later because of the whole housing authority transition issue. We wanted to make sure that the plan fully funded those activities, and so that's why it's a month later. But really the time frame by which it's in the hands of council people is pretty similar to what it's been in the past. But we certainly can. I mean,
well, we may want to try that next time to look at the rough drafts, up front before we actually submit the plans to the committee. So I think that would help out with the council.
If you give me how many days, weeks, months, years, whatever, that I need to have it in advance, I can certainly do that.
Yes, Ms. Jordan.
I would suggest that there's no reason, since we're working with estimated amounts anyway, that Marvin, you couldn't present it to us by November 1st. And then that gives us plenty of time to discuss it between November 1st and February when he needs it. I mean, there's really no reason not to have it that far back.
Well, Marvin, is that a possibility that you can have rough drafts out by November 1st?
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, we'll try to do that then. I'm going to skip over to Mr. Hoskins. He had a question, and I'll come back to you, Ms. Glory, if you have some more.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What about the issues raised by Councilor Baker, specifically the categorizations of needy, elderly, handicapped? Has something changed in this plan from the last plan?
Yes, I believe that the wording now reflects. Let me go back just a second. With the previous council, we went through extensive discussions in regard to an overall, what we call the housing program policy, and got some general principles in there. And that was supposed to be, each Indian housing plan should be in conformance with those overall principles that were, I'm not sure what the right word is, if I use the wrong word, agreed to, not objected to between the chief executive branch and the tribal council at that time. What I did in this Indian housing plan, I went back to that document that was presented and either not objected to or agreed to, and I used the precise wording out of that document to be included in this plan. And it does say needy elderly and people with disabilities as a preference, not of course exclusively. Services don't go exclusively to them in programs, but they receive the preference, needy elderly and needy people with disabilities.
So there was never an understanding between the council and the chief that it would be simply needy would be one of the categories of folks that are a priority? Because that's what I gathered from what Councilor Baker had to say. Neediest of the needy, I think is how he phrased it. But that never was an understanding. Is that what you're saying?
That was discussed. That particular phrase was used. It actually comes from the HIP, Housing Improvement BIA HIP program, uses the phrase neediest of the needy. And that particular concept was discussed extensively, but in the written document that was presented, it narrowed it down to giving preference to the needy elderly and the needy people with disabilities. And so the written document that was presented has that particular description.
How would it impact this plan if we disregarded what was written and did what Councilor Baker, I think, is suggesting, which is to say we need to focus on the neediest of the needy, the elderly. And I think he said we might jettison handicap simply because if there's a handicapped person who's needy, then they'll fall in the needy category if they're elderly. So, but how would that impact your plan if we followed what I think Councilor Baker was suggesting? It would give preference, obviously, to a larger number of people. As for the mechanics of the plan, it's irrelevant. As for the executive branch as to what they want to see in the plan, that's, what is in the plan is what they want in the plan. So to the extent that there's impact on it, it's only, the only impact is that it's beyond what the executive branch wanted to propose. But there's no impact as far as anything else in regard to the plan. Is it possible for you to, just so we can understand the impact, you could take the criteria that Councilor Baker set out, which is neediest of the needy and elderly, and sort of run the numbers and say, here's how much that would cost if we're going to put the priority on them, or here's how many elderly might not get served if we're saying neediest of the needy. I mean, my sense is that his approach is a good one, but of course I haven't considered yet the cost of that or who gets left out. That would be important for me to understand.
Okay. Yeah, we could do that. I don't, again, I think what the administration would say is we want the same dollar amounts. If you want to expand the preferences, then the dollar amount will remain the same, because if you increase that amount, you got to decrease something else in the plan. I believe that will be the administration's view on it, but certainly we can do some impact as to how that might affect people.
And then lastly, if I could, just courtesy to Councilor Baker, he asked about temporary modular add-on units and maybe an explanation as to what that is.
That has been in each of the Indian housing plans. The ideal, and I don't know that it's ever been implemented. It's available. What the ideal was that HUD used to have a program where that they took these modular units, and primarily for elderly people, and they located them right in the same area as the kids' house. Let's say the kids were going to take care of the parents. connected onto the same utilities in order to have those elderly people live right next to their caretakers. And so I don't believe that's ever been implemented, but it's still in there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you,
Ms. Jordan.
Okay, on the resolution, since we haven't been doing it the way the resolution describes, we haven't been utilizing that last part. You have been bringing all the changes back to the council.
Because of the timing, like in previous times, what is that, like this last time on the 07 plan, we got the final amount between the time that we approved it in committee and before the council meeting, and then we incorporated it into the, we had an amendment, I think, on the floor maybe, at the council meeting. So it worked out fine then.
So the way we're doing it is working, and the way that the resolution is worded is not what we've been doing. Is that correct?
We haven't had to do it the way, we haven't had to use that provision.
And since the wording kind of appears that we're giving up our right of review if we don't agree what is not substantial, I would ask for this committee to consider that we revise the resolution so that we delete that last paragraph, so that we continue to use our review process as we always have in the past. The wording doesn't appear to need to be there, because we're not doing it that way now, and it's always worked in the past the way we were doing it. Or at a minimum, let's revise the wording so that it only will take care of the specific changes in the amounts, if it should come out more or less from your estimates. So either it needs to be reduced down to one thing that they could change without our review, or since we're not utilizing it, let's don't have it in there at all, because it certainly appears from this resolution that we as the council are giving up our right of review. And I would make that in the form of a motion, that we delete this unless there's some imperative reason that we keep it in there, since it's never been used in the past. Or Marvin, we've never used it, right?
Right.
Okay.
Second.
Got a motion, second. Marvin, you can have some.
Yeah, just to clarify, what the wording says is that the committee doesn't give its right to review it, because it makes the determination. Any change, regardless of how minor or insignificant, that change would come to the committee, and the committee would make the determination as to whether or not it was substantial or material. If it was not substantial or material, then the committee would say, yeah, I'll go ahead and proceed. If it was substantial or material, then it would have to go through the full committee process. That's what the wording means. Doesn't mean that any change that we make won't come back before you.
Okay, I think there was Mr. Yes, Mr.
Yeah, I understand that's the intent, Marvin, but since we've never used it, let's don't give the appearance that we're giving up our right of review. It seems to be working the way we're doing it now, so we really don't need this wording. So let's don't put it in the resolution. And that's all.
Okay, Mr. Hoskins and Calvin Watts.
But isn't it true, even if we strike this language, it sounds like we'd still be doing about the same thing. You would come to us, and I suppose if the committee didn't deem it to be significant, we could fairly efficiently approve it, particularly with advance notice. But so that's why I second the motion, because it seems to be language that hasn't been used, and I have no doubt if it remains in there, you'll use it in a responsible way as you have in the past, but we can't just have the language in there for you. Who knows who might be making these decisions down the road, so I think for that reason it's good to strike it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's,
Go ahead to Marvin, then move on to Calvin Watts.
The practical effect, if it's not in there and there's any sort of minor change, I will not send the Indian Housing Plan up without the council approving it. Won't do it based on committee saying, yeah, go ahead and do it.
Okay, Ms. Callan Watts.
Hey, I just had one question. Is this the same language that's been in all the past resolutions?
Right, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have Mr. Stowe.
Marvin, how many minor mods do you do to this plan during the time it's under review, or, you know, over, I mean, 3 years, 2 years? What's typically, does it stay in process until it's completed?
The best way to answer that in regard to this particular provision is in the initial submittal, because the initial submittal, HUD has to review it. They go for a full 60-day review, and sometimes they'll come back with just complete. I'll just give you an example. When I was at the Creek Nation, wrote the plan, their only comments was that I spelled Muskogee Nation wrong, because I spelled it with an SC instead of a K, which is, you know, Muskogee Nation is spelled, you know, with an SC, and so we had to go back through council in order to make that wording change. So initially, they will review this particular plan. They won't find anything major with it. I don't think. They haven't in the last few years. And there will be some minor changes. Almost certain. They will not let a plan go through without some, you know, kind of change to it. And so I would say that initially there's always going to be at least one. I know that there's going to be a change to this one, because this is based on an estimated amount. I know that for sure. And that we will have to revise this plan. What process it goes through is what we're discussing right now. But afterwards, there are 2, 3, 4, 5 plans, changes that actually go through the full process. We'll bring them back to committee, and they'll go through the full council as we did, you know, last month.
Ms. Fraley, you have a question?
I guess the Community Services Committee, the way I understand this, will determine what is material and substantial. It'll be up to the committee. And if it is material or substantial, then it will go through the full process. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Hoskin?
Withdrawal.
Ms. Jordan?
Well, if you leave that without further council action in there, though, they don't have to come back to this committee. It would appear that if they decide it's not substantial under this wording, they do not have to come back to this committee, and certainly do not have to come back to full council at a regular council meeting. I'm simply saying we need to narrow the wording so that something doesn't slip through that we might consider material, but that they might consider not material. There's no definition of what material and non-material is. So at the very least, you need to consider taking out that without further council action, and at least put in there with this committee's knowledge and approval. So at least it comes back to a committee meeting if it doesn't go to full council. Because this implies, without further council action, that if they deem it not material, and again, I'm not thinking that Marvin would abuse this, but we must look on down the road. The way this is worded, without further council action, implies that it doesn't ever have to come back to anybody if they deem it non-substantial.
Marty?
The they in that sentence, and it may be not worded correctly, but the they in the sentence that Councilor Jordan is referring to is the committee. Any change, you know, and the wording may need to be, you know, to get this intent. Any change in the plan that is needed to take place will come before the committee. And the committee makes the determination, is this substantial or material? If it is, then it goes through the full process. If it's not determined, then the committee itself says, without further action, can say, yeah, I'll go ahead and make that change, whatever the change might be.
Would that satisfy your?
Let's make then the wording appears to be somewhat ambiguous. Let's make it specific so there's
That's
not
fine.
a question.
That's fine. I don't have any problem.
Mr. Baker?
Yes, just for clarification, when it says goes to the committee, this is the committee it comes to.
Right.
So it does come to this committee for discussion, and if we determine it's not material, then it does not have to go to full council.
Okay, let's make those changes, and I think it'll be more clarified.
I think a simple way to resolve it, Mr. Chair, would be just to delete without further council action there at the end and leave the rest of it the same. Because, see, it says that it'll come to community services. Just stop there without further council action. Let's don't give up our right to make changes if we desire to do so. Marvin, would you not agree if we make that change, that will catch it? And if you do agree, then I would modify my motion and ask Councilman Hoskins to consider that on his second.
I would, if he does.
So the sentence would say, why don't you?
I think it's fine, yeah.
And the motion is to delete a period after HUD. Is that correct?
And look and see if that takes care of. Here's what we don't want to do, and I think you just came in.
If I was quick on the uptake, if someone could tell me
We
what.
want this paragraph to say that they will come back to us, because that's what they're doing now. Now, not this committee, not that it needs to go on to full council, but this committee needs to be made aware of changes. So we want the words to be revised so that we know they're always going to come back to this committee so that we're least enlightened as to those changes.
Okay. But let's read it all together out loud. Be it further resolved by the Cherokee Nation that should the Department of Housing and Urban Development require changes upon its review of the submitted plan, and the changes do not reflect substantial or material modification as determined by the Community Service Tribal Services Committee, then the changes and additions, deletions, and/or modifications may be made in return for further consideration by HUD without further council action. Now, this sentence requires that if HUD requires changes and those changes are not substantial material as determined by the Community Services Committee, then nothing else has to be done. But it would, in my opinion, require that any changes would come to this committee, and you would make the determination whether these changes were material or substantial. So any changes are going to have to come to this committee anyway.
But it sounds like that if it does not reflect I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
But it sounds like if it does not reflect a substantial change as defined by Marvin's group, that they could bypass us. That's what I'm trying to, that's what I want the wording tweaked so that we cannot be bypassed for any change. So it may be we need to drop up here and talk about taking out do not reflect substantial or material modifications. Some way the wording needs to be tweaked so that we always know as a body that they will at least come to this committee.
Why don't we just add, to make it completely clear, add the words that should HUD require changes upon its review, that's HUD requiring changes, of the submitted plan, and the changes do not reflect substantial material modification as determined by the Community Services Committee after their review, then the changes, additions, deletions, and modifications may be made and returned for further consideration by HUD without further council action.
Okay, so where we putting?
After Tribal Service Committee, you would be say, as determined by the Community Tribal Services Committee after their review,
Okay.
comma, or after its review. Would that,
I think
No,
that
it
would
still
work.
doesn't say it's coming here.
We want to make sure it comes to the committee.
Yes, sir. I got
okay, I'm not an English major, but
I got Mr. Critton and then Mr. Baker again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I came in late. I apologize. I had something I was taking care of, but I read this paragraph, and I guess I didn't get on a lot of the discussion. I thought it was pretty clear and plain to me. But I think we've pretty well got it fixed now. I mean, sounds like. That's just a comment I had.
Mr. Baker?
Yes, I was going to suggest that as determined by the Community Services Committee of the Council, which means it does come to this committee, as determined by the Community Services Committee of the Council, then the changes, additions, etc., may return to HUD without further council action. Which just means that we can approve it in this committee without having to go to the full council.
But you want to make sure it comes to the committee.
Well, then we say, as determined by the Community Services Committee of the Council,
And
which is what it's saying, that it is this committee.
And she wants to make sure it doesn't bypass the committee.
Mr. Chairman?
let's try this. That should the Department of Housing and Urban Development require changes upon its review of the submitted plan, those changes are to be submitted to the Community Service and Tribal Service Committee of the Cherokee Nation Tribal Council for determination of whether those changes are substantial or material.
That's better.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Because I'm not a member of this committee, I seconded a motion that may have been inappropriate. I didn't change the fact that I support it, but I don't want the record to misreflect that.
I got Mr. Cobb and then Ms. Jordan again. I might need,
I just wanted to say, I mean, I'm not touch on legalese, but I think everybody in this committee is agreeing with what you're asking. Just, does this, I mean, as the council attorney, I mean, just make a determination, you know, whether you want to change. I think what you're asking is you want to make sure that this committee determines if it's a significant change. So is the wording any and all changes to the, I mean, however you want to word it. I mean, everybody's in agreement with you. It's just however you want to word it. That just, I think Ms. Jordan's concern is that she wants to make sure, and I'm not putting words in your mouth. If I'm wrong, tell me. But I think your concern is the committee decides what's substantial, not somebody else. That's what you want.
And this is exactly what I'm trying to say. I do not want us giving up our right of review. And I believe Todd has tweaked the words, and I like the way the wording, the last wording, Todd, was that you just said. I believe that ensures that it will always come back to this committee. Any type of changes we will look at before it's sent on to HUD. What I'm afraid of is that we might fall through the cracks one day and somebody back up and say, well, we thought it was non-substantial, and it was something substantial. So let's do our job by saying, let's come back to committee each and every time that we're going to make a change, and just the committee, not full council, that will move it on quicker. I would modify my motion to include the wording of our attorney as to this last paragraph. And out of an abundance of caution, Chuck, I would ask for a second from someone that is on the committee.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. I'm going to take one more comment from Ms. O'Brien.
Well, I think it's all up to how we look at it individually. To me, it means this already, but if we add this to it, it makes it a little more clear and more explicit. And maybe we'll feel more comfortable with it, but the way I understand it, it means that already, but I'm comfortable with adding those words to it, so it's very, very plain. I'll have to say.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to make those changes for the second. I'm going to ask Mr. Henry to read that one last quote, then we'll take a vote on it.
Yes, the change would be to submit, to place a period after plan on the second sentence. So it would say that should the Department of Housing and Urban Development require changes upon its review of the submitted plan, period, quote, those changes are to be submitted to the Community Service Tribal Services Committee of the Cherokee Nation Tribal Council for determination of whether those changes or modifications are substantial or material, period. And then, well, I would add, and then we could say that if so determination is made that they are not substantial or material, then the changes could be submitted to HUD without further tribal council.
Okay, we all got the quote on the changes on the resolution. Questions been called for. All in favor of those resolution changes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Now that that's taken care of, I think, do I hear a motion on the, one more question? Okay, Mr. Thorne.
I'd like to ask a question on this paper that you just handed out. What I'm looking at is last page, and we're looking at building packages. Is that the SIP program?
Right, that's correct.
And the mortgage assistance has almost $4 million in it, and we carried over funding in that mortgage assistance this last, in 06, is that not right?
There's a
substantial amount.
There's a substantial amount of mortgage assistance.
What page is it?
Last year. Would it be too much to ask to maybe this council take $1 million away from this mortgage assistance, at least $1 million, and put into the building packages? Do you know exactly how much we've got in that mortgage assistance plan right now? I've heard all the way up to 6 point something million.
With the revisions of the Indian housing plan that were made last month, there was a total of $6.2 million out of the 2006 plan, and out of the 2007 plan there's $1.8 million. Now, some of that money has been spent last fiscal year out of the 06 plan. He ran out. We're going to see how much of that 06 money had been spent. So, out of the last two Indian housing plans, there's a total, with those revisions, of $8 million, with some of that money being spent last fiscal year.
It wouldn't be out of the way to take additional funding out of the mortgage assistance and put it in the building packages. Is that right?
The council, the only way I can answer that, I guess, is this is the administration's proposal, and the council obviously can modify and change it, and that these numbers reflect what the administration prefers to be in there. Changing it, as you suggested, don't cause any technical issues with the plan. It's certainly within the...
I would like to make a motion to take $2 million of mortgage assistance plan and put into building packages.
I second that motion.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion on those the motions? Ms. Jordan.
I would just point out that Marvin just told you that he's already saying out of 06 and 07 you have $8 million in mortgage assistance. I would suggest to you that we need, and he's also told us that we can modify this plan at any point in time, because your 08 money traditionally is not going to be used that much until you use up your '06 and your '07 money. I don't see any harm, since there's so much money in mortgage assistance, to let's actually go back and build some homes. That would be a novel idea, that we actually build homes with housing money.
Ms. Fulbright.
Okay, I'm looking at this totally different. Down in Sequoia County, mortgage assistance is very, very popular. And I've been dealing a lot of things with the Choctaws, and they give $25,000 mortgage assistance. And I was told by the chief that we used to give $10,000, but a former council raised it to $15,000. I think as publicity gets out about it, more of our people will want mortgage assistance. I'd rather raise the mortgage assistance to $25,000 and leave the money there than put it back over into building houses. And I hate to disagree with my fellow council member from Sequoia County, but that's my thoughts on it. So I don't want to move it.
I want to, Marvin, I want some clarification on this. I want you to tell the council or this committee what a building package is. I know what it is, but I want to make sure they understand what we're talking about when we say building packages.
A building package is everything that it takes to build a house, the materials. It's built around a structural insulated panel type of housing. And these would be eligible people would be able to get those packages, and then with technical assistance from Charlie Selp's group would go erect houses. I think that they're going to do the work to the dried-in stage, as I understand, the so-called dried-in stage. Community services would, and then the people would provide the sweat equity for the rest of the houses. So the building package, that use of that phrase is essentially, here are the materials, we'll provide you technical assistance and some construction assistance in order to build your own house. And then they have to pay the money back.
You know, I really like that program because, to me, it really puts some self-respect into those people that build those houses. I'm going to ask Mr. Thornton to modify his, as a friendly amendment, to put $1 million over in that instead of the $2 million.
Well, can I speak?
Sure.
Under this mortgage assistance plan, I was probably the biggest backer in this plan 3 or 4 years ago. And the problem was that there wasn't enough money in that plan to assist the people that qualified for that plan. So we went ahead and put additional funding into that plan. But now, we've got $8 million in there. I mean, there's no way in the world you're going to spend that money, mortgage assistance, under the people that qualify for that plan. Because there's so many people that don't qualify for it, that are low income or high income. This is just for a certain people that qualify for that plan. And what we're doing is taking funding away from building homes for the lower income. And this SIP program covers new homes, self-sweat, or what you want to call it, for the people that can't afford this mortgage plan, mortgage assistance plan. And that's the reason that I'm so adamant on doing this. And I want to leave it to me, because I think we've got enough money in there to cover the mortgage assistance plan for the next 2 or 3 years. Now that's the way I'm looking at it. Maybe I'm wrong.
Mark.
Yeah, just to give you some estimates, and people behind me can, correct or clarify. My understanding is that when the Housing Authority was doing the mortgage assistance program, with the increases that are contained in the '06 plan, that they estimated that they could spend all that '06 and '07 MAP money by the end of this year, December 31st, and then they would start utilizing the 2008 MAP money. So in Now, that was when the Housing Authority was doing it. The Commerce Group is now doing it, so they may have different estimates, but that's just to give you information to consider.
Mr. Crittenden.
Yes, I have a question for Marvin. Marvin, the money that's set and that's put in this proposed 2008 Indian Housing Plan for building packages and research and development, is that going to, do you think that's sufficient for another warehouse type? Is that in the plan there also to beef it up a little bit so we can kick these packages out quicker and faster to the people? Is that going to take care of that, do you think?
This particular plan contains a lesser amount than what would have been in there if we didn't sustain right now an $800,000 reduction in fund from this year to last year. That money would have been, additional money would have been in building packages if we hadn't, lost or not got that money.
So, Mr. Chairman, that makes me think that David's probably right on with his proposal then, because of what Marvin just said. In order to beef this program up, sounds like that $2 million looks like a good plan to me, David.
Okay, I've got Mr. Cobb, Ms. Jordan, and Ms. Fishing Hawk. If this question pertains to the motions on the floor, I'll allow it. If not, then we need to take a vote on the question. Mr. Cobb?
You started to answer my question, but I'm not sure. How much do we typically go through the mortgage assistance per year? You got any idea at all?
I think that the Housing Authority reported several months ago that for a fiscal year ending September 30th, they did over 300. If you multiply 300 times 15,000, that's $4.5 million.
Okay. And you started to answer my question about the 06 and 07, and then you said, but that was before, and then I kind of lost you there. Is there $8 million in mortgage assistance right now?
No.
Okay. What is actually carryover? What's there in mortgage assistance? What are we working with total here? Because my point to this is going to be, I think you both got good points. Why can't we do both of these? That's eventually going to be my point. But I don't know what kind of money we're working with here.
And the numbers that we have that we're working with that are already approved by the tribal council are being requested to be modified this afternoon again. And that's why I wanted to share some information with you. We have right now in the 06 IHP 1.3 authorized for this year out of the 06 plan. The request this afternoon is to up that to 3.6. So it's a $2.3 million increase. So of the 06 plan, if you approve what's being requested of the increase into the mortgage assistance this afternoon, a total of 3.6. The 07, recent approval of the 07, the way that it's been submitted and approved, is 3.9. Okay, so obviously we haven't really got into that money yet. The 08 that you're considering now in the Indian Housing Plan is at 3.9 again, as you know. So the 3.6 is available for this year. I mean, it's if you approve the mod this afternoon. 3.9, which is already approved and ready. As soon as the funding drops for 07. We already have the 07 funds. Okay, so there's 7.5 funds available in the bank right now, plus another 3.9 whenever the 08 gets funded, which will be 11.5.
Let me update that. The plan revision for the 07 plan reduced the mortgage assistance to $1.8 million. So there will be a budget revision reducing the total amount to 1.8.
Out of which year?
out of the 07.
Okay, I wasn't aware that was coming.
My question is, Marvin, is, and this is a loaded question, but what would have to happen for us to raise mortgage assistance to $25,000 and build more homes? And that's a loaded question because you're looking at a lot of over the course of several years here. But what would have to happen to the budget?
You'd have to reduce some other activities in order to fund that.
So it's not there. We'd have to reduce something.
Correct.
Well, maybe or maybe not. It depends on how many awards how many MAP applications are actually funded that year. That will determine how long those funds will last. Even if you go from 10,000 to 25 or 15 to 25, that increase, if you don't spend your entire available appropriation for mortgage assistance that year, then you may have spent it all if you increased it to 25. So just because you take it from 10 to 25 doesn't necessarily you have to throw extra funds at it. All depends on when those funds actually run out. Because they haven't been running out for 2 years now. We haven't depleted our balances in that time.
I'm not opposed to this, but I would like to bring this back at some point. I know we can modify this at some point. I believe that's correct. I'm not opposed to this, but I need to look at these numbers a little bit more than make a decision right now.
That'd be fine with me. I'll withdraw the motion and we'll bring it back up to the next meeting. That'd be fine. We'll look at it and see.
Okay, so you withdraw the motion? Okay. Ms. Jordan, you have a comment?
Could I ask one question for clarification? Do we have the lady here that runs the Commerce Department?
Yes, Ms. Knight.
Yes.
Could she come forward? Maybe she can answer this question.
Yes, sir.
And you were talking about, we still have that motion in regard
No, we have just withdrawn the motion.
on the resolution, the wording of the resolution.
That's right, yeah, we got no, we talked about, we got it.
Only one more question.
Ms.
Yes,
Knight?
yes.
How many loans did you all close in the Commerce Department last year that dealt with mortgage assistance?
Assisting the people with self-sufficiency counseling, 51. 51 people that wouldn't have been able to get a mortgage without the counseling piece.
So 51 times 15,000 is basically what we're talking about for the year.
Right, right. And that's actually the people that finish the counseling, not necessarily the people that close their homes yet. There's still I'm not sure, Shay, how many? 24 are still looking for their homes, but they're qualified for a mortgage.
So that involves about, somebody tell me if I'm wrong, is that 750,000?
65.
At 15,000 per family?
765, looks like to me.
And I think they just told you, if we pass this in its present form, we have 11.5 million in there. At that rate, it takes us 10 years. I mean, I think there's money here to do both, build and mortgage assistance. I would ask you to revisit that motion. It just makes sense. It's there, folks. It's there, and we need to put it in the proper places so we can be hitting both parts. Let's build houses and let's do mortgage assistance. And I would even be for upping the mortgage assistance, as Councilman Fulbright has said, to the 25,000. Make it more attractive for those borderline people to get into those homes. We're leveraging our money at 25,000 and getting them a new home. We're putting our money in the SIP packages, and we're going to get houses built through the self-help project for less than what it takes to buy a house that's completely done. We can do both. We really can. The money is here. It just needs to be apportioned around a little bit.
I did just want to clarify too that last year was the first year of the full year of the self-sufficiency program, and although we got 51 people through the counseling process, we have 250 people that are actively participating that should kick out within the next 12 to 18 months.
And the money is there to take care of those people too. Even if we do this little shift of the 2 million.
David, you had a comment, maybe?
Yeah, this has kind of gotten, need to clarify. Last year, we did 310 or so mortgage assistance. 310 families got $15,000. Right now, so far, since October 1, we've done 124 through January 30th. So we're averaging 30 a month, $15,000. There might be 6 something in the, is that 6.2 will be in the 2006 once it's revised. 3.5 of that was pretty much gone at October 1st. So there's more money being put in there. There's a little being reduced out of the 2007. But at the current rate, we will do 300 more of these this physical year. And the idea behind that was, instead of putting $80,000 into a house, you serve more families with $15,000. And we've been able to do that.
Okay. I've got Mrs. Fishing Hawk, Mr. Thornton, Mr. Jordan, and then we came here to pass the 08 housing plan. I'm going to ask for a call for that question so we can get it. And what I understand, Marvin, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we need to go back and make modifications to this plan, we can do that.
That's correct.
Okay, so I think we've discussed this enough, so I'm going to have 3 more questions and want someone to call for the question for the 08 housing plans. Ms. Fishing Hawk, you had a comment.
Yeah, I have asked a couple of times, and I think you sent me a little sticky note, that I wanted to know how much these SIP homes are costing us, because we figured it was over $100,000 to drop this building package. That's the actual materials plus the administrative, and I still have not got an answer. And I would like you to get that to me this week.
Take a look at what I handed out and go down and look at the asterisk for building packages, which will be the one asterisk. You'll go across and see how the breakdown of that $1,030,000 is. It's $40,000 environmental review, $720,000 for building packages, and $270,000 for research and development. So the $720,000 represents 10 houses. Is that right, Brian? Yes. 10 houses. So the cost is $72,000 a piece.
Their cost is $72 a piece.
Yeah, 72 times 10 is 720.
Okay, can you show me the ones that dropped on the ground? Can you get it to me within the next week or so to show me that the ones that we've already got on the ground has only cost us $72,000 a piece? That's all I'm wanting. Because when you was in here the other day, we backed out numbers and they was a little over $100,000 a piece. When me and you backed out the numbers went through. And just get it to me sometime next week. I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. And if I could just clarify, the sticky note that we gave you broke it out, so that it, I believe the amount ended up being $72,000 on the sticky note too. So, but they'll get you the information, Brian.
All the ones that dropped. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Thornton?
Does this include the building the panels? Is that what you're, in other words,
the research
over there?
The research and development part of the building packages, that's to pay for the staff that works down at the Cherokee plant to make the panels.
Okay, then we're paying employees also in this program.
Yeah, yes.
Out of this $72,000.
Yes. The community services staff that provides the technical assistance that does the drying in.
Yeah, we're not out here running contracts on these houses to be made.
No, the contracts that I think they do, the heat and air maybe contract, that would be included in the $72,000, not in addition to.
Maybe we get terrible heat and air people. I think that's a good deal. creating jobs.
Okay, Mr. Baker.
Yeah, I had to leave for a little bit. Did we broach the subject of the neediest of the needy while I was gone?
We haven't changed it.
I'd make a motion that we change that paragraph to not leave out a whole class and go back to neediest of the needy, elderly, and people with disabilities with minimal income.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. I want to go back to Ms. Watts on the last issue there before we take this vote.
Well, I had a motion to make,
Oh, okay.
and so,
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed you. Let's go ahead and do the motion on the floor to change that to the neediest of the needy. Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
I didn't spit it out, but I would include me with Chris on that. I don't understand why we're changing that.
What page?
Uh,
Page 20.
It's in several places. Page 20 is where it comes up on the in one place, but I'd like to change it throughout. But if you go to page 30, just one second. If you go page 32, you'll see that there's 1,634 families that are living in substandard housing, and there's another 1,634 families that are living in overcrowded conditions, and they're all either and those are low-income people, and to not make them priorities in our housing plan is just wrong. And so by adding neediest to the needy, we can serve those people as a priority, and I think we should.
Well, I believe we just had a vote on it, and it passed to put the neediest of the needy in there, so I think that's what we're going to do.
Could I get
Yes.
a clarification on that? Where specific, you all need to tell me where specifically to make the changes.
Every place where you put needy elderly.
Okay. For people with disabilities, you want to change?
No, you've changed that. You've got people with disabilities with low income, and that's
I mean,
fine.
any place where it says
Yes.
needy, elderly, and people with disabilities, you want to change it to? Okay.
And, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
On page 9, on 5A, I think it's a typo, but it says above the baseline of 16 officers to provide land enforcement. I'm pretty sure that's law enforcement.
Okay.
I mean, just typo.
That's my mistake, yes. Thank you for pointing that out.
Councilman Watts?
I'd like to make a motion to approve this Indian housing plan.
Have a motion to approve. I hear a second. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same time. Well, thank everybody for coming. Marvin, did you have, okay, a comment?
Will this be placed during the committee meeting, hopefully Monday?
Yes, if you'll make those changes that Mr. Baker told, and we'll send it to full council for Monday. Yes. Okay, well, thank everybody for coming. I think we had a good discussion. I think we're all understanding that we can come back with some changes to the housing plan. That's how I understand it. So,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye. Thank you. Chairman, 5 minutes.
Okay, be 5-minute break before rules.